Hello everyone, and welcome to the dative case. This is the last case that we'll be learning this year, the last new case, and it's a very important one because it shows us the indirect object in a sentence. We've already learned about the direct object, which comes in the accusative case, when we ask the question, what? Mike gives what? Mike gives a rose. However, if we want to know to whom Mike gives the rose, we need the indirect object, because the indirect object refers to someone, or it refers to something given or shown to someone or for someone. Now, please note especially that in English, we have to add in these words to and for because there is no Latin word for them when you're referring to the indirect object. You may be thinking, well, there's the word ad, Caecilius ambulat ad forum, Caecilius walks to the forum, but that refers to motion rather than giving or showing something, which is different in Latin, even though it sounds the same in English. In Latin, if we wanted to say that someone gives something to someone, we would never use the preposition ad. We would put it in the dative case, which is what we're going to be learning about today. Let's look at a few English examples to get an idea of what the indirect object looks like. Sally gave peanuts to the elephant. Sally is the subject in this sentence. We can tell because we can ask who gave. Sally gave. Sally gave what? Sally gave peanuts. Peanuts is the direct object in this sentence because it is what Sally gave. If we want to find the indirect object, we need to ask to whom. Sally gave peanuts to whom? To the elephant. Therefore, the elephant is our indirect object in this sentence. David sent a letter to his friend. David is the subject. David sent what? Sent a letter. David sent a letter to whom? To his friend. So in this sentence, his friend is the indirect object, and the letter is the direct object. It is what was sent, and to whom the friend, indirect object. Mom bought a dress for me. Who bought the dress? My mom, that's the subject. My mom bought what? A dress. That's the direct object. My mom bought a dress for whom? For me. Therefore, in this sentence, me is the indirect object, what would go in the dative case. Now, the dative case can be tricky in English because it can also look like this. Sally gave the elephant peanuts. The information in that sentence is exactly the same as Sally gave peanuts to the elephant. It has a subject, a direct object, and an indirect object. But the word to doesn't appear in this sentence, which can make it trickier for us to understand which word is the direct object and which word is the indirect object. But we're going to ask the same questions we asked before, and we should get the same answer. Who gave? Sally gave. So Sally is our subject. Sally gave what? Sally gave the elephant? No, that's not right. Sally gave peanuts. So peanuts is our direct object still, just like it was in the last sentence, because peanuts are what Sally gave. Sally gave peanuts to whom? To the elephant. So the elephant is again our indirect object because he received the peanuts. This works for all three of the sentences we just looked at. David sent his friend a letter. David is our subject. David sent what? A letter. The letter is the direct object. David sent a letter to whom? His friend. So his friend remains the indirect object. My mom bought me a dress. My mom is the subject. My mom bought what? A dress. Dress is the direct object. My mom bought a dress for whom? For me. Therefore, I am still the indirect object. Let's look at our dative case endings for each of our declensions. Hopefully you recognize these charts or these declension endings from what we've been looking at before. You'll see the nominative at the top, first, second, and third declension, the accusative, which we now know in the singular and in the plural for all of our declensions, and also the ablative. Today we are adding the dative case. Actually, just quickly before we go on to the dative case, I just wanted to add in here quickly the ablative plural, which we've also seen several times, but for some reason was absent from my chart. You'll notice that the ablative plural in all three declensions is exactly the same as the dative plural in all three declensions. This can make it sometimes tricky to tell apart, but you'll have to keep your eyes peeled for that. It does also make it a little easier to remember, since it's the same ending for dative and ablative plural. Our dative singular endings, though, are different in each of our declensions. AE for the feminine, O for the second declension, usually masculine, sometimes neuter, and I for the third declension. Let's have a look at these with some words. Here at the bottom you can see I have nominative singular of a variety of Latin words, and I want us to change them into dative singular words. Now as I look here, puella, I can see that this is a first declension word because it has an A ending, and I want to turn it into a dative singular. I look up here and see that my dative singular ending is AE. So puella becomes puellai. Femina is also a first declension word, so I will want to add the same ending to femina, and it becomes feminae. Amicus, with its US ending, is clearly a second declension word. My dative second declension ending is O, so amicus becomes amico, to the friend. Senex. That ending is a third declension ending. It doesn't fall into our other patterns. And my third declension dative ending is an I. So I will add to the end of sen, my stem, I will add an I. Senex becomes seni. Leo, another third declension word, will also need an I ending in the dative. And you'll remember that some third declension words need to add in that N or another consonant to avoid vowels being next to each other. So Leo becomes leoni, just like in the accusative it becomes leonem. Let's look at some plurals. Puella, first declension, my plural ending is IS. So puella becomes puellis. Femina becomes feminis. And if you notice, amicus is second declension, but the ending is the same as the dative plural first declension ending. It's still IS. So amicus becomes amicis. Senex and Leo, our third declension words, want to take on an ibus ending. So senex becomes senibus, and Leo becomes leonibus, to the lion. Let's look at some example sentences in Latin. Caecilius servo pecuniam non dat. Our subject here is Caecilius. Our verb, dat, well, non dat together. And then I have servo and pecuniam. I see from my am ending that this is accusative, so I know it's going to be the direct object since there's no preposition at the beginning. And servo, my O ending, indicates to me that this is dative and going to be, therefore, the indirect object. So when I go to translate, I'll start with my subject, Caecilius, and then non dat, does not give. Now I want my direct object. What doesn't Caecilius give? Caecilius does not give money. Servo. to the slave. I could also translate this rather than saying to the slave. I could say Caecilius does not give the slave money. I've still said the same thing. Caecilius does not give money to the slave, or Caecilius does not give the slave money. Both examples equally correct. Cocuus domini canam fecit. Here's my subject, my verb. I see again an am accusative ending to indicate to me my direct object. And now I see an ae ending on domini, and I know that that is the dative ending for the feminine. So I know this word is dative. The cook made canam, dinner, domini, for the lady. I can make the same alteration that I did in the previous sentence, and instead of saying for the lady, I can also say the cook made the lady dinner, and have exactly the same sentence in the end. Last one, quis mercatori navem vendit. Here it's a little trickier to identify my subject because it isn't a person. In fact, quis, who, is my subject. I see my accusative ending on navem, and I see an I third declension dative ending on mercatori, so I know that's dative. Who vendit, sold, now I'll go to my accusative, a ship, mercatori, to the merchant. Or, just as correctly, who sold the merchant a ship. Both correct. Let's take a look at just the first few panels of the cartoons for stage 9, and then I'd like you to read the rest of the cartoons on your own. Quintus ad thermas venit. Quintus came to the baths. Quintus servo pecuniam dedit. Here I see my dative, servo, which we just saw in a previous sentence. Quintus gave pecuniam, money, to the slave. Amici Quintum laete salutaverant, quod diem natalem celebrant. The friends greeted Quintus happily because he was celebrating his birthday, diem natalem. So if you ever want to wish someone happy birthday in Latin, you can wish them felicitem diem natalem. Happy birthday. Quintus discum novem ferebat. Quintus amicus discum ostendit. Quintus was bringing his new disc. Quintus showed his disc, amicis, to his friends. Or we could also say, Quintus showed his friends the disc. Have a look at the rest of the cartoons for stage 9 on your own, and then proceed on to the first story, which is Thermae in this chapter.